Semple and Mr. Morrison.
Thank you, Your Honor. Lieutenant Gallo, 20 years of experience plus is what I understand you have, is that correct?
Yes.
Are there many lieutenants in the New Jersey State Police?
Yes.
Okay. I thought that you were the only one.
There's many.
With regard to your duties, certainly over the course of the past years, you've had extensive criminal investigation, basically at crime scenes, am I correct?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you what was marked previously State Exhibit S71. It was shown to you initially by Mr. Mueller, I believe. And I believe you said you did not take that photo, is that correct?
That's correct.
Have you seen that photo before today?
No.
And with regard to that photo, does it appear to have any identifying characteristics as to where it may have been taken?
There's some pallets in the back that have, it looks like dog food on it. So looking at it, it's on that sidewalk in front of the store.
Okay, so you've identified it as probably being in the vicinity of the pet store?
Correct.
Okay. With regard to your review of the document, if you just saw it today, and I assume that's when Mr. Mueller showed it to you, it's the first time you saw it?
Yes.
You made a conclusion from looking at the document, the photograph, that it was not blood spatter on that particular picture, is that correct?
No, I actually, that day, we saw this. Detective Ryan and I saw this at the scene. We determined at that point that it wasn't biological evidence, and we didn't collect it that day, so I didn't photograph it.
And it was not of any evidentiary value because it was not?
Because we didn't feel that it was biological evidence.
Right.
We didn't feel it was blood.
So that would not be evidence of a victim having a severe bloody nose, would that be fair to say?
It didn't seem, no, to us, we thought it was paint, actually.
Okay,
Because it was a little bit raised. It wasn't flat to the surface.
very good. With regard to your investigation, of course, it began here in New Jersey, and then we took you out to St. Louis on the 10th, I think it was, 10th of January 2010.
That's correct.
And you were accompanied by 8, there were 8 in total officers, as I understand it, correct?
Yes.
And who was Detective Troy Hedberg?
Troy is a detective with the Criminal Investigation Office out of Sussex. He worked out of Sussex Station as a detective.
Okay, do you remember him accompanying you to Missouri?
Yes.
Do you know whether or not he prepared any type of notes or report in connection with that investigation?
I don't know, because I didn't really work with him per se.
I see.
He's out as a detective. He was more doing with Detective Brown. You know, we worked in the office with him.
So when you were in Missouri, you didn't interact then, I assume, with Troy Hedberg?
Oh, I did. No, I absolutely did. I mean, I saw him every day. He was with us, but he wasn't doing what I was doing.
Okay, what was his function?
He works in CIO, so he's a detective. He conducts interviews. He may have just been assisting. I don't know if he was mentioned in anybody else's report.
Only yours, I think. What does CIO stand for?
Criminal Investigation Office.
Okay. And there was, you just mentioned Detective, is it Detective Sergeant Howard Ryan?
Yes, he's retired now. He's a retired lieutenant.
He participated at the investigation at the scene, I think, when you said you looked at that picture that I showed you initially, and he also went out to St. Louis with you, correct?
Correct. Detective Ryan works in the crime scene office with me.
Okay. And do you know whether or not Detective Ryan wrote any reports?
No.
No, you don't know, or no, he didn't
No,
write
he
any?
didn't write any.
Okay.
No, I know. He didn't
This
write
would be your investigation from your department or your...
any. Correct.
Okay. Now, in regard to this particular investigation, you basically went out to process the crime scene, so to speak, correct?
Correct.
And that consisted of gathering information, taking photographs, but not necessarily interviewing people, correct?
Correct. We don't interview. My job is to collect the evidence from the scene. photograph the scene, memorialize the scene, you know, if the shooting, we do shooting reconstruction, we do blood spatter reconstruction. That's our job.
Give me 1 second here, if you would.
Yes.
Of the exhibits that you presented here today, some of which were photographed and shown to us, there was evidence of certain items that were found within the vehicle, namely the Chevy Malibu, am I correct?
Correct.
And when you saw that, I assume that it was in the Lake of the Ozarks Police Department in the lower level in a closed garage area?
Correct.
And at that point in time, was the vehicle in any way sealed?
No, it was, the garage that it was kept in was locked.
And when I say sealed, there wasn't any tape on it or
No.
zip locks on the doors or zip ties on the
No.
doors? And were you satisfied that it had not been compromised by any other persons in getting it to its location?
All I knew was what I was told. There was, the car was towed from and followed by a police officer from Rick's convenience store. And then the police officer followed it to Lake Ozark PD. It was stored in a locked garage.
Mhm.
So
Were
if
you,
something happened in between there, I had no knowledge of
were
it.
you told that the officers pushed the vehicle into that locked garage from after it was towed?
No, I knew it was disabled. I don't think it was running, so it might have been disabled. Probably had to.
And when you went into the vehicle, you said that you had made certain observations within the vehicle, and that the observations included finding various items such as starter fluid cans, a 9-volt battery, I think,
Correct, a couple of them.
a couple of 9-volt batteries. And I'm sure that in your life you have purchased and used 9-volt batteries, am I correct?
Yes.
And we don't only use them in stun guns, do we?
No.
Radios, other things they're used in, correct?
Yes.
Was there any other item in the car that perhaps could have been a 9-volt battery-operated item?
Not that I recall.
Did you find any bricks, chains, or sleeping bags in the motor vehicle?
I do recall there was a chain in a box in the trunk, I think.
Could you describe them?
The chain, it was
Yeah.
like a thick chain, like a heavy chain. I don't know what you use it for, but it was, you know, about that thick.
And does that appear somewhere on your log of items that you found in the car?
I just photographed it, I didn't collect it.
I see.
There was a lot of items in the car. In fact, the car was packed with stuff, so we had to make a determination what was important and what wasn't. We couldn't, you know, we weren't taking everything. That's our job, to make this determination. And some things that, when you're at a scene, are not important.
You also said that you examined the clothing of the 3 individuals who were suspects in this case, is that correct?
That's correct.
You were not there when the clothing was removed from them, I assume, were you?
I was standing right outside the door when I think Howie Ryan when it was removed from them, I'm sorry. No, the clothing of the suspect was taken from them at the jail.
Correct.
And the patrolman Goose brought them back to the police department.
I see. So when you received them, they were basically in an evidentiary nature in a big bag or something of that sort?
They were separated. Each subject's clothing was in a separate bag. 2 of them were in a clear plastic bag, and Mr. Sworn's was in a gym bag.
I couldn't help but note that when you went through the photos, you indicated that among Mr. Stangeland's clothing there was item S207, a pair of work boots, or actually a pair of boots, correct?
Correct.
And did you determine what size those boots were?
Let me look at my evidence file and see where I've been. 13D.
Okay, pretty big pair of shoes or boots, correct?
Yes.
And you determined they belonged to Mr. Stangeland?
I was told they were belonged to Mr. Stangeland.
I see. So you can't actually yourself identify any of these items actually belonging to any one of those individuals. Would that be fair to say?
They were turned over to me by Truman Goose, and that's what he told me, yes.
And-
I did not take them off the
Right.
suspects, I didn't, no.
Tell me about Mr. Swarns. Tell me about the skull cap and the red bandana. They're photographed in S maybe 212, S211. The contents.
They came out of Mr. Swan's bag. Out of the bag that I was told belonged to him, that came from the jail.
The bandana was red in color, if I'm correct. Is that right?
That's correct.
And was there anything unusual about that bandana, or was it a run-of-the-mill bandana?
Just a regular bandana. I didn't notice anything.
Didn't say the name of any particular organizations on it, did it?
Not that I noted.
And the skull cap had a symbol on it. Do you know what that symbol stood for?
No.
In the course of your investigation, you also determined that Mr. Swarns, Mr. Stangeland, and Mr. Waddell, none of them had any visible injuries on them. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And did you actually examine them to make that determination, or is that something you were told?
No, we took photographs of them.
Okay. When you photographed Mr. Swarns, did you note any the fact that he had a broken hand?
No. He didn't have cuts on his hand in the photographs.
He did not?
No.
Okay. And you didn't note any swelling, bruising, anything of that sort on his hand? Did you ever note whether he was right-handed or left-handed?
No.
Mr. Waddell, his clothing was also reviewed by you, correct?
Correct.
And photographed. And what exactly was the purpose of photographing all of the clothing from these individuals?
It's something we always do. When we have a suspect and they're being arrested, we take their clothing, we photograph it, especially if we think they were in some kind of altercation. We're just showing that there's maybe not any rips in their clothing, there's not any blood in their clothing. So we photographed it so I can show you how it was when I received it.
Was there anything that you recollect on the clothing that you photographed from Douglas Stangeland, which would have evidenced that there had been any altercation involved?
No.
The blood that you said you saw on Mr. Swarn's jeans, which were marked with little, I guess arrows they're called, identifying arrows, correct? That was never tested, I believe you said, correct? So the assumption was that it was blood, but you don't know for sure.
No, don't know for sure.
And of the 3 pairs of overalls, jeans, pant type items that were taken from the 3 of them, Mr. Swarns was the only one that had anything that even resembled any blood on his clothing. Is that correct?
Correct.
That would be true of all the clothing that was examined by you.
Correct.
It was only on the pants, correct? And with regard to the pile of receipts, what did you ultimately do with them?
Some of them were collected and put into evidence. Not every single piece of paper in the vehicle was taken.
There was a receipt from the Super 8 in East Stroudsburg or Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, dated, as I recollect, on the 7th arrival, departure on the 8th, right?
Yes.
And do you recall whose name that receipt was in?
Mr. Stangeland.
And there doesn't appear to be any effort on his part to hide his identity, does it?
No.
You didn't do anything with the firearms other than photograph them, am I correct?
That's correct.
I think you indicated you did not remove them from the vehicle. Officer Warner did, and therefore you're not exactly sure of their location, correct?
No.
Mr. Mueller, the first assistant prosecutor, asked you to read into the record something from what was contained in the notebook that was in the portfolio in the trunk of the vehicle, right?
Yes.
There were other,
That's right.
there were other documents in that portfolio as well, correct?
Correct.
And did you read them?
I didn't read everything, no.
So was today the first time that you were called upon to read anything that was contained in that document or in that portfolio?
When we were out there, because we were going through the trunk deciding what we were gonna take, when I did go in the portfolio, I realized it probably belonged to him because his name was in there, and I probably read that first page. I didn't read everything because we had some little bit of time constraints when we were out there, so I couldn't sit there and read
Do
the
you
whole thing.
recall whether that document was signed by anyone?
I don't recall.
Do you know of your own knowledge who the author of it was?
No.
As I recollect, it began using the word "sir," however. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And it also referenced the family, correct? Now, from your investigation and reading it in that note, did you determine who the family might represent?
No. I just thought it was probably pretty important, so I better collect it.
I see. When you took the photographs at Rick's C-store, those photographs would have been taken at least 2 days after the incident occurred in the parking lot there, am I correct?
Yes.
And
They were taken Tuesday morning.
I see.
We were on our way to the airport, actually.
And did you have any reference with anyone to determine whether or not those pictures accurately depicted what it looked like on the day in question?
No.
Did you make accurate copies of the videos at Rick's C-store?
Yes.
Who did that, you?
Howie Ryan had a thumb drive, and I think it was the manager of the store just put it right into his computer and downloaded it.
I see. And the two videos that we have, one inside, one outside, those were the only two that you actually obtained, right?
He told us that's all he had.
Obviously, surveillance cameras usually are running 24/7, aren't they?
Yes.
So there should have been more if you wanted more, correct?
Maybe if they were working, I mean, I don't know. Because a lot of times you go to places, in other cases that I've had, and they have surveillance tapes and they're erased, or they weren't working, or they don't have them anymore. So, you're lucky to get that.
Did any of the photographs you took at Rick's C-store evidence anything of evidential value in the sense of any altercations that may have taken place that 2 days prior?
Not that we noticed.
You didn't interview anyone there at the store? other
I
than-
didn't interview. No.
If someone interviewed the manager to determine there were videos available, I assume.
We asked them that day when we were there. I was taking photos, and I had said to Howie, hey, let's go find out.
When you saw Mr. Jeff Mueller at the airport, you said you made certain observations of him. I think I understood you to say he was a mess. Is that the word you used?
Yeah, he just seemed like he had been through something very traumatic. I felt so bad for him.
And by the time you saw him at the airport, you had already been privy to all of the to-date investigations that had occurred with regard to the incident, correct?
Yes,
And when you saw him, you indicated he had a black eye, I think?
yes.
And you indicated that he had some visible facial injuries, correct?
Yeah, you look like he had some cuts on his face.
And of your own knowledge, you don't know when they were received or how?
No, I didn't. I just knew that this looked like someone who had been through something pretty traumatic.
Well, I'm sure in your career you've seen people with worse injuries than you saw Mr. Mueller that day, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I deal with that.
No fingerprints in the car. That's what you said, right?
None that were usable, none that were good enough for us to lift and make a comparison with.
And there was nothing unusual about that fact in your mind from all your years of investigation?
Happens all the time.
So you didn't find any fingerprints that evidenced Jeffrey Mueller was ever in the car? You didn't find any that evidenced Mr. Stangeland was in the car, Mr. Swarns or Mr. Wade, correct?
No, we just did the interior, we didn't do all the items in the car, and, you know, I didn't process all the items we collected, we didn't process any of them for fingerprints, just the interior of the vehicle, and surfaces that were conducive to leave fingerprint, which weren't that many.
And even though you took, how do you pronounce it, buccal or buccal?
Vehicle.
Hear it both
You
ways,
can say it either way.
either way. Even though you took 3 swabs, or maybe 6, right,
Mhm.
from these individuals, the swabs were never destined to go to the New Jersey State Police lab, I assume.
No, none of them went to the lab.
Did you remove S-235, the bag that was in the trunk that had the diary type document in it?
Yes,
Did you remove the briefcase belonging to Mr. Mueller from the trunk?
yes,
Did you remove a backpack from the trunk?
yes.
Did you determine who the backpack belonged to?
I don't think so.
Have you ever reviewed the surveillance tapes from the Rick C. store?
I saw it once.
Where was it you found the zip ties in the car?
I have to look at my notes. There was some in the interior of the car. I think in the front, the floor. They were taken from the passenger, some in the passenger side door, black zip ties.
I see. Black ones.
Mhm.
Mr. Mueller, the assistant prosecutor, first assistant prosecutor, asked you, did any of the receipts that were contained in the pile of receipts marked S-228 show evidence of a visit to Sussex County? Do you remember him asking you that?
Yes.
And I think your answer was yes.
I'm not positive, I don't know if my answer was yes, but I'm not positive, because there was a lot of receipts, and it was getting to the point where we were in the time constraint, because we had to fly back to New Jersey, so I didn't go through every single receipt. Some of them I just took, and we took them in as evidence.
I see.
There
And
was a lot.
after that, you didn't really even look at them probably, right?
Some of them I didn't look at. Some of them stood out, so I took them to the side and photographed them by themselves.
I have nothing further.
Prosecutor?
Just briefly, Judge, just with regard to DNA. The purpose of DNA, is it often to determine the identity of a perpetrator? Is that typically what it's
Yes.
used for?
That's correct.
Was the identity of the perpetrators, in this case, in dispute or in question?
No.
Is that why nothing was submitted?
Yeah, that's why nothing's spent, because it costs a lot of money to do DNA down at the lab, if we don't spend that money, we're not gonna spend it. And there's no reasons for it.
And with regard to the receipts, we saw the pile of receipts, but we also showed the one from East Stroudsburg at the Super 8. And do you recall the date?
Checked in on the 8th,
Yeah.
or the 7th, checked out on the 8th.
Which was, what was the date of the kidnapping, do you recall?
I think it was that, right? I just called on the, yeah, it's the 8th, that Friday, January 8th, 2010.
Last question, Judge.
Lieutenant, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you said you were finished, okay.
Testified, I believe that you found a chain or chains in the vehicle. I
Correct.
want to show you what's marked S254. Is that a copy of the chain?
Yeah, it was in a box in the trunk,
In the box in the trunk?
yes,
Okay. And you took that photograph?
yes.
Judge, I understand. With the court's permission, can I show this?
All right.
No further questions.
Mr. Moore?
With regard to the picture of the chains or chain that was found, did you remove it from the box and photograph it? So the sole evidence that we have is the photograph of it sitting in a box?
Correct.
And it was found in the trunk of the car?
Correct.
And were you, through your investigation, given evidence that the vehicle had been towed by another vehicle after it broke down on the road, a van that took them to Rick's C-store?
Yes,
And do you know what type of a device was used to tow it?
I have no idea.
You don't know whether it was a chain or a strap or what, right?
I was never told, no, I have no knowledge.
With regard to this investigation, obviously many man hours and many expenses were incurred by all kinds of law enforcement agencies in this connection, correct?
Yes.
And of all of the evidence that you gathered in connection with your part of this investigation, could you tell me what, if anything, was of evidential value?
Just showing our suspects, pictures of suspect, their lack of injury, showing their clothing that they were wearing, because we did have a live victim. He could testify as to what they were wearing, things that were important, also things that were in the car, the zip ties, because, you know, eventually we found out that our suspect was zip tied. The stun gun was very important. Our victim's glasses at the scene, all the notes in the car back and forth to each other kind of show, you know, maybe what was going on in the car. The Sussex County phone book, the receipts tying him to this area.
I see. And with regard to those items, you basically reported them in your rather extensive report in your notes, if I'm correct.
Correct.
And at the time that you flew out to St. Louis and then ultimately into the interior of Missouri, am I correct that at that point the suspects had not made any statements to law enforcement that you were aware of?
Judge, could we just approach for a moment?
Yeah.
here, we might have had a court report, I'm not sure, but I can't have the question read back to you. But I think it was something in the direction of, on the 10th of January 2010, when you flew to St. Louis and then to more interior parts of Missouri, were you aware whether any of the individuals who later became the suspects had given any statements?
At that time, I don't think so.
Thank you, I have nothing further.
I don't have anything else, Judge.
Very good. Could counsel approach real quick?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Lyons? Logistically, the best thing to do is to excuse you for the day, and we'll set things up for tomorrow. And so we will do that. Once again, I'll ask that you not discuss the case with anyone, let anybody discuss it with you, not read anything about the case. There may be, of course, media coverage. Have a nice evening. Thank you very much.